All right, in these last four problems, we're going to write a system of equations. We'll change it to matrix form, and then we'll use our calculators to get our answers. And we want to make sure we always answer the question at the end. So here it says a Broadway theater has 600 seats divided into orchestra, main, and balcony seating. So there's three types of seating. Orchestra seats sell for $40, main seats for $30, and balcony seats for $25. If all the seats are sold, the gross revenue to the theater is $18,750. If all the main and balcony seats are sold, but only half of the orchestra seats are sold, the gross revenue is $16,350. How many of each type of seat are there? So in this case, we need to find the number, or in this problem, the number of orchestra seats, the number of main seats, and the number of balcony seats. So that's going to be our variables. X is the number of orchestra seats. And we would assume those are the best seats because they're the most expensive. Y is the number of main seats. And Z is the number of balcony seats. I guess you would call those the cheap seats here. So let's go ahead and, if you look at that first sentence, it says there's 600 seats. We know some of them are orchestra, some are main, and some are balcony. So X plus Y plus Z has to add up to 600 because X, Y, and Z are just the number of each type of seat. And we know there's a total of 600 seats. Next it says if they're all sold, the revenue is $18,750. Well, for the X seats, or I should say the orchestra seats, which X is the number of orchestra seats, for each of those we make $40. So 40 times X is the amount that's collected as revenue for selling those X seats. So 40X is the amount collected when you sell X of these $40 seats. So if X was 2 times 40, it'd be $80 collected for those 2 seats that were sold. And similarly, we're going to make $30 per seat for the main seats, so 30 times Y. And the amount collected for Z seats is $25 each, so 25Z is the total collected for Z seats, Z of the balcony seats, and the total collected is $18,750. Finally, on this last part right here, it says if all the main and balcony seats are sold, but only half of the orchestra seats. Well, let's see, X was our orchestra seats. So basically, we're going to cut that amount in half. So it'd be 40 times X over 2. Well, that's just 40X over 2, or 20X. And I'll put that in the next line. Everything else stays unchanged, except for the total is going to be 16,350. So let's rewrite this as 20X plus 30Y plus 25Z equals $16,350. So this, we'll just go ahead and cross that off. This is our third equation. So let's go ahead and write this using matrices. So once you've formed the matrix, you can put that into your calculator. Remember, you're going to use the RREF button. That's to put this matrix in reduced row echelon form. And when you do that, you should get this matrix here. Now notice in the top line, that's a 1x, or x equals 120. In the second line, that would be y equals 390. And then at the bottom there, that would indicate z is 90. So remember, we're supposed to indicate how many of each type of seat there are. So there's 120 of the orchestra seats, because X was the number of orchestra seats. 390 main seats, and 90 balcony seats. All right, let's move on to the next problem. It says a lottery winner of $3,800,000 invested the winnings in 3 different simple interest investments at 8%, 7.5%, and 6.2%. If the interest after 1 year is $268,200 and the amount invested at 6.2% is twice the amount invested at 8%, how much was invested in each account? So X, Y, and Z are going to be the amounts invested either at 8%, 7.5%, or 6.2%. So we'll say X is the amount invested at 8%, Y is the amount invested at 7.5%, and Z is the amount invested at 6.2%. Now you might wonder, why are they putting it in different accounts? Why don't we just put it all in at 8%? Well, this is what we call diversifying. We're going to put that money in 3 different places, and by doing that, it tends to make things more safe. We're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, they would say. So all to say, let's see, we should be able to write 3 equations. By the way, this guy's being smart. Most people that win the lottery blow it. But you could literally invest the money and live off the interest the rest of your life. $268,000 is not too bad for an annual income. I think I can manage on that. All right, so let's see. So if $3,800,000 was the total invested, and X, Y, and Z are the amount invested in each account, then those 3 numbers should add up to $3,800,000. That's the total that was invested. Some at X, or some at 8%, some at 7.5%, and some at 6.2%. We don't know how much is in each, but we know the total is $3,800,000. That's what we're investing. So if we invest X dollars at 8%, that means we're going to get 8% of what we put in there after 1 year. Notice it says if the interest after 1 year, so after 1 year, you get 8% of the amount that's in that first account. 8% of X we would write as 0.08X. The interest that we're going to earn on the second account is 0.075Y. Notice to change to decimal form, we're just moving that decimal 2 to the left. And then for Z, it's going to be 0.062Z. So that's the interest earned on the amount in that account. And the total interest earned is $268,200. And again, that's how much you're getting each year. That's not bad. All right, finally here it says the amount invested at 6.2% is twice the amount invested at 8%. Well, what was the amount invested at 6.2%? Well, that was Z. And that is, or equals, the amount, or twice the amount invested 8%. So that would be 2 times X. All right, now be careful. This last line we need to adjust because we have an X, Y, and Z column on the left, and on the right side we should just have a number. And so let's subtract 2x on both sides. We're going to get negative 2x plus z equals 0. And so that's going to replace that equation there. Now we're ready to put this in matrix form. Be careful on that last line, or last row. And if you do the RREF function, reduced row echelon form, on your calculator, it's going to tell you it's this, which means X is 800,000, Y is 1,400,000, and Z is 1,600,000. So remember, X is the amount invested at 8%, Y is the amount invested at 7.5%, and Z is the amount invested at 6.2%. So these are your final answers. We were asked how much was invested in each account, and these are our answers. All right, So number 11 is similar to what we just did. You might want to see if you can solve this one, and then you can look at my solution. So I would stop the video. All right, so X is the amount borrowed at 7%, Y is the amount borrowed at 8%, and Z is the amount borrowed at 10%. So this corporation actually borrowed $1,500,000, and they borrowed from 3 different places, one place at 7%, one at 8%, and one at 10%. So we know that these total amounts add up. The total amount borrowed was $1,500,000. So we have the equation X plus Y plus Z equals $1,500,000. Now the interest in this problem that we're going to pay each year is going to be 7% of X, or 0.07X. The interest for the amount put in at Y, 8%, would be 0.08Y. And the interest on that amount that was put in the Z account would be 10% of what's in there. And that total amount of interest is $130,500. Now, I'd much rather be earning that each year, but in this case we're actually borrowing, or we're going to have to pay that in interest each year. All right, we've got one more equation we need to come up with. And in all these problems we're doing, since we have 3 variables, we'll only be able to solve them if we have 3 equations. So we need one more. So you look what's here. It says the amount borrowed at 10% was 4 times the amount borrowed at 7%. So let's see, the amount borrowed at 10%, that's Z, was, that's past tense of is, which we use equal for. 4 times the amount borrowed at 7%, that would be 4x. So again, we want to make sure that this is in the right form. We need to get that x term on the left. So I'm subtracting 4x on both sides. I'm going to get minus 4x plus z equals 0. And so I'll use that instead of what was above. So now I'm ready to write my system. So that's the matrix you ought to be using. And again, we're going to use RREF on the calculator to put it in reduced row echelon form. And you should get this matrix here. So that tells me that X, or the amount borrowed at 7%, would be 150,000. And Y, which would be 750,000, that's the amount borrowed at 8%. And if you look there at the bottom, Z is 600,000, and that's the amount borrowed at 10%. And another thing I might mention is you could easily plug these numbers back into the 3 equations, and it should make them all true. You can check your answers on these. All right, we have one last problem. So this looks a little bit different, and in fact this is similar to what you'll see in the homework. I believe that's 6.2. So it says find the quadratic function for which f of negative 1 is 5, f of 1 is 3, and f of 2 is 5. Well, it says f of negative 1 is 5, so if I plug in negative 1 as my input, or x value, I get 5. So let's do that. We get f of negative 1 equals a times negative 1 squared plus b times negative 1 plus c, and that's equal to 5, because we were told it was equal to 5. Well, look at what I've underlined here. Negative 1 squared, that's just 1 times a. We're going to get a there. And b times negative 1 will be minus b. So this results in this equation here. A minus b plus c is equal to 5. Similarly, we can plug in 1. So I'll plug in 1. And again, if you look at the part here, 1 squared is 1, times a is a, and of course b times 1 is b. We're going to get a plus b plus c is equal to 3. And finally, if you plug in 2, when you plug in 2 here, you get 2 squared, which is 4. You're going to get 4a plus 2b plus c is equal to 5. And so there's your system. Let's go ahead and write it in matrix form. You're going to do the RREF thing so that your calculator will change it to reduced row echelon form. And this is what we get. That tells me A is 1, B is -1, and C is 3. So remember, a quadratic function's in this form, and now we know A, B, and C. So we're going to get 1x squared. If B is -1, we'll get minus 1x or minus x, and then plus 3 since C is 3. So that's how you would do a problem like this. And that's the end of this video.